Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My dear Lord, please guide us all as we try to dive deep into your teachings and bring them deeper into our hearts so that we can all come closer to you and rejoice in your eternal love for us. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I would like to start by asking a question. How many of you have heard about Lord Chaitanya? Okay. Everyone almost. Okay. How many of you have heard about his pastimes or his teachings for some time? Maybe for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. For 6 months? For a few months? Less than 6 months? Okay. So I'll assume a basic level of familiarity with the teaching of Lord Chaitanya. That's okay. Thank you. So let's start by a contemplation. So if you consider Mahaprabhu. Now many of you have heard various things about him. So some of his teachings, some of his pastimes, some of his characteristics. So I'd like to ask, what aspect of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do you personally feel most attracted by? Any teaching of his, any pastime of his, any particular interaction with someone, or any aspect basically? Yes,
Mahamantra.
So his propagation of the Mahamantra, his teaching of the Mahamantra. Yes, that was his.
I'll tell you from my personal experience, when I was trying to recite Bhagavad Gita and try to memorize it, every time it was becoming difficult, more and more difficult to memorize, because the Mahamantra start coming in between the memorization. So
Okay.
I decided to basically stick to Mahamantra.
Okay. Interesting. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, ma'am. You raise your hand? No. Sorry, I thought optical illusion. Okay, sorry. Yes, please.
The conglomeration of, or the essence of all four Vaishnava Sampradayas is given in Chaitanya's philosophy.
Oh, okay. You could say harmonization or synergization or integration of four sampradayas. That is a very significant contribution of his, which is often not adequately addressed or appreciated. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else?
Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Jagannath Puri, and especially the time when he spent in Gambhira. So,
what exactly about those pastimes?
So, I mean, when he first came and met Jagannath, the feelings that he was having, the expressions that he was having, and how it inspired other devotees to, towards Jagannath.
So basically, you could say is broadly the ecstatic symptoms.
Right.
His ecstasies, basically, he could say that yes, they are extraordinary, and in fact, across various religious traditions, there are descriptions of saints experiencing some dramatic transformations because of their love for God. But even among such descriptions, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstatic symptoms stand in a league of their own. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
The mercy he shows Jagai and Madai.
Okay. So his mercifulness, his mercy, especially mercy on Jagai and Madai. So how they were utterly undeserving, and yet he bestowed mercy on them. Thank you. Yes.
How he confronted Kazi, who was trying to oppose the Harinam Sankirtan, and he boldly went on to.
Yes. So we could say his fearless, his confrontation and then transformation of Qazi. So that is the time when Islamic rule was prominent in India, and most people would not dare to challenge. So given how sometimes spades of intolerance could be possible, that's remarkable. Yes, true.
I'm not sure exactly like the teaching, but I really appreciate his relationship with Sachi Mata, and then also the pastimes of Nimai, like how he cries and all until all the mothers start singing Hare Krishna, and then he stops crying.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so you could say childhood pastimes, especially with. So he on one level is a naughty child. On the other side, he is also divine. The way he stops crying with Shachimata. Yes, thank you. Very sweet pastime. In fact, there are remarkable similarities between his pastimes as a child and Krishna's pastime as a child. Of course, there are differences, but that's quite a striking set of similarities. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
So another thing I want to add, like the way he assimilated all the devotees, the Panchatattva together, and in the name of bhakti, and he pulled the masses for that.
Okay, so just as you could say his influence in bringing both the classes where he had intimate associates and the masses, both. Thank you. So these are all very important aspects of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, and more than his teachings, you could say his legacy. So when the Lord appears in this world, so we'll try to see if we can address some of these. But for me, what fascinates me most is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's his trajectory from scholarship to devotion. That how even at a young age he was an extraordinary scholar, and from there he went on to become a devotee par excellence. So we'll come back to this. But when the Lord appears, primarily there are two aspects to his. Okay, you want to take this? Okay. So there are two aspects to his teachings, or two aspects to his descent. One is circumstantial and the other is universal. Circumstantial means that when there's a divine descent, there is something that he does at that time. And then there is something that he does for all time. So Kunti Maharani in the Bhagavatam 1.8, the 8th chapter of the first canto, she analyzes what is the reason for the Lord's descent. She's of course talking about Krishna, but the principle is the same. And she says, oh, there is a burden on the earth, and the burden on the earth is to be removed. Oh, there is a virtuous king who is being persecuted, and he needs to be delivered. She refers to Apare Vasudevasya. So Vasudeva and Devaki were being persecuted. Or it says, Yudhishthir, he was being troubled and he needed to be protected. She gives all these reasons, and the concluding reason she gives is, so the first few reasons she gives are circumstantial reasons. Circumstantial means that relief at that time. So the Lord does come to say offer relief to the Lord Ram comes to offer relief to people from Ravana. And similarly Krishna comes to offer relief to people from various demons, Kamsa and others. But then there is universal, that is relief for all time. And here says, she says, Shravan Smaran Arnani Karishyan iti kechana. That by hearing and by remembering about him, we can be eternally benefited. So there is his Leela and there is his Shiksha. So broadly speaking, his Shiksha is what attracts our intelligence. And the Leela is meant to attract our mind or our heart. Basically, you could say our reason and our emotion. Both of these need to be attracted to the Lord. Many places the Bhagavad Gita says, Mai arpita mano buddhir. That offer your mind and your intelligence to me. So though the intelligence is satisfied, it is persuaded, it is convinced and energized by understanding, by probing the philosophical depth of the teachings of the Lord. And our emotions are drawn toward the Lord by seeing how loving He is, how much of pure and selfless love He manifests and reciprocates with His devotees. This combination of mana and buddhi, that is Krishna talks of buddha bhava samanvitaha. In the Chatushoki Bhagavad Gita, the first verse 10.8, he says, buddha refers to the intelligence being engaged, and bhava samanvitaha. With the whole heart, a person gets connected. Okay. So now, with this background, that the Lord's purpose is universal as well as circumstantial. So we will look at some aspects of Lord Chaitanya. We'll look at one Shiksha and one Leela. So his Shiksha comes at various places. For us, there is one Shiksha of his that we recite almost every day and remember regularly. Which is that? The Shiksha Ashtakam, yes. Cheto Darpanam Arjuna, that series of verses. And now, his pastimes have many different flavors and moods to those pastimes. So, we will look at, as I said, let's look at Lord Chaitanya's pastime and then we'll try to see how a teaching is demonstrated. There are many teachings of his which are undoubtedly there, but what is Lord Chaitanya actually doing when he is coming here? As I said, circumstantially he's inspiring people to chant the holy names, but he's also doing something much more. He is, if you consider, Lord Chaitanya lived for how many years? Do you remember? 48 years. So it was a relatively short life, but it had a long impact. Now, among these 48 years, do you know the distribution? At what age did he take sannyas?
24.
So at least half the age. So this was the sannyas phase. Now, in this sannyas phase, there are two divisions. Do you know the two divisions?
Last 18 were in Jagannath Puri.
Yes. So one was almost like a traveling phase. So this was where he went to both North India and to South India. Actually, first he went to South India and then he came to North India. And then the last part was is based in Puri. Now there is one more marking before this. That is that at the a few other landmarks, at the age of 20, he actually got initiated. He met Ishwar Puri in Puri. In Puri? When did he meet him?
In Gaya.
Gaya, yes. So he got initiated. And now before that, there was another landmark at the age of 14. What was that?
He started the college?
Sorry?
The toll.
He started his college, that's true.
How-
But something more happened. That is definitely remarkable.
How old? His
So,
There's something which was like a remarkable achievement, a testament to his scholarship.
he defeated the
Keshav
Keshav.
Kashmiri.
Yes, Digvijay Darpahari, Imai Sundar, Digvijay Darpahari, that arrogance. So he defeated a champion scholar. So now, this was his broad trajectory. If you see, before that also in his childhood, he manifested some symptoms of devotion. Like you mentioned that he would stop crying when he would hear the singing of the holy names. But apart from that, he was a very mischievous and adventurous child. And then as he grew up, especially after he discovered studies, and he just took to them with gusto. And he became so good that he started his own institution. Now, in the study of Sanskrit, there are multiple levels of study. So Vyakarana itself is quite difficult, grammar. But so for us, even mastering grammar is difficult. But in one sense, grammar is considered in traditional Sanskrit scholarship preliminary. So he mastered that. And from his age perspective, it is remarkable. But there was also the feeling that, okay, in Keshav Kashmiri came out, he said, okay, you're a grammar teacher, I heard about you. So it's like, see, in every social circle, there are subtle or insider ways of putting down other people. So insider ways, if there's a company where there's level 1, there's class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4 officers. So you meet someone, say class 1 is introductory and class 4 is much higher. Oh, you're a class 1 officer. So the idea is that I'm much superior to you. Like that. Okay. So if you meet somebody in devotee circle also, you might have the subtle put down. Oh, you are just first initiated devotee. You are a non-initiated devotee. I generally don't use the word non-initiated, I try to use the pre-initiated devotee. He is preparing for initiation, coming toward initiation. But anyway, so he tried to put him down over there. So now, this, as I said, I find very attractive this whole concept of how Mahaprabhu evolved from scholarship toward devotion. So we try to look at his teachings from that perspective. Now when Keshav Kashmiri came to Navadvip, see at that time, in that Navadvip was a high seat of learning. And in every place, people's reputations are determined by what is valued in that place. So if somebody is in Wall Street, then maybe how much is their equity, how much money they make. How much money they make, you could say it's valued everywhere. But you could say, if there's somebody lawyer, how many cases have they won? So every place has its parameters for deciding. The level for reputation. So now in scholarship, the reputation is determined by the idea that you should not lose any debates. So Keshav Kashmiri was a triumphant Pandit, and it was reputed widely that he was blessed by the goddess of learning, Saraswati. And so he was considered undefeatable. Now, when the Pandits of Navadvip heard that Keshav Kashmiri is coming there, they decided that we can't have a loss on our record. So they all made excuses and started leaving. I'm out of town. So in a hospital, there's some very difficult surgery to be done. And then the surgeons don't want a record of a death on their history. They say, I'm not available for this surgery. So they started doing like that. And they decided that we are supposed to be a seat of learning. then but somebody has to be there. If nobody is available at that time, that would also be a disgrace. So they were concerned for their reputation as well as the reputation of their town. So it is all a reputation game for them. The scholarship can often become just a way a person boosts their ego. So now on one side there was individual. So because it was individual was there, so they just left. But then there was the collective in terms of their town. So they said somebody has to be there to face him. So they decided, let's have Nimai Pandit. Now Nimai Pandit was like a rising star. He was considered a very promising talent. And the idea was that if somehow he miraculously defeated Keshav Kashmiri, it's very unlikely, but if it happened, then the idea would be, even a kid from our town can defeat the world's greatest scholar, Digvijay Pandit, and then the reputation of Puri would be enhanced. On the Navadvip would be enhanced. On the other hand, if he was defeated, it's like, okay, what's the big deal? Doesn't matter. He was just a kid. So, say if a cricket match is there, say India sends its B team to play with some country, and the B team wins, even our B team defeated you. But if the B team loses, after all, it was a B team. What's the big deal? No, it is not a big loss. So they had their own game going on. Now, Nimai Pandit was wise to their games, but he was not playing their game. He had a higher purpose. This is one of the most significant incidents where he manifests a side beyond his side of rhetorical or intellectual excellence. He will manifest that later when he starts manifesting his devotion. But at this point, it is like a foreshadowing of what is going to happen. So, now, on this particular day, Mahaprabhu sat on the banks of the Ganga and he was having a school over there. He could meet the students in his own home, he could meet in their others' homes. Brahmins had a lot of reputation, but it's not necessary that they had a lot of wealth. Jagannath Mishra was not utterly poverty-stricken, but he was not fabulously wealthy also. So he was having an open-air school on that day. And then he was a riveting sight. His golden complexion itself would catch the eye. And there was also eye-catching effulgence that would come from his body. So not everybody ascribed that effulgence to his divinity. But still, he was a person. If you look at them, you could not stop looking at them. He was like that. And he was sitting with the students and talking there, formed a beautiful circle. The Ganga was flowing in the background and the soothing breeze. And Keshav Kashmiri walked by. There is a certain level of conceit that was there within him. And he looked around and he saw, okay, who is this group sitting over here? And then he walked by, he wanted to go and take a bath in the Ganga and to offer his respects to the sacred river. And then he passed by. And then, when Nimai Pandit saw him, he offered him, oh, you are the famous scholar Keshav Kashmiri. He offered respects to him. He says, who are you? So his students introduced him. He is Nimai Pandit. Oh, I've heard about you. You are their grammar teacher. So he said that, I heard that you have never been defeated. He said, I am just a grammar teacher. Mahaprabhu took the humble role. He said, since you are such a great scholar, can you illuminate our heads and hearts by speaking about the glories of the Ganga which we are beholding right now? those who are scholarly, they are often just waiting to demonstrate their scholarship. So he had come here, and while on one side he was speaking the glories of Ganga. See, the mind is so, or the mind or ego or whatever you want to say inside us which works against us, it is so subtle that we may be glorifying the Lord, but our mind is caught with how much are others appreciating how well I am glorifying the Lord. So we are focused not on the Lord's glories, but our glories. So the description of the greatness of God is a tool to establish our own greatness, which is a colossal underutilization. Generally, on the spiritual path, Krishna is the ends, and bhakti is meant to be the means. By bhakti, we attain Krishna. This is serious or pure, serious devotion, it goes towards pure devotion. But there is, on contrast, contaminated. So quite often Krishna and bhakti, in this case both become means, and worldly gains. They can be wealth or they can be fame. These become the ends. That means I worship God so that I become famous. So unfortunately, Sarvabhautacharya was like this. What is Sarvabhautacharya? Who are we talking about?
He was the greatest Advaitavad.
No, who are we talking about right now? Which is the person we are talking about right now? Keshav Kashmir. Thank you. So now, this is a universal weakness that we are all as humans are vulnerable to. So Keshav Kashmir spoke 100 verses, spontaneously composed, in praising the Gita. And now in praising the Ganga. And then the Nimai Pandit decided to play along the same game. And he said, that was astonishing. He says, since we are all students of grammar, now can you please review your composition from a grammatical perspective and tell what is good and what is deficient about it. He took it as afferent. There are no faults in my composition. It's like suppose you are expecting praise from someone and then you don't get praise. It's like suppose you go to somebody's house for food, for prasad, and then they give prasad and they saw prasad. After, how was the prasad? It was edible. It's like there is something called damning by faint praise. The praise is so faint that it is a criticism. So, what do you mean edible? It should be much more than edible. So like that, in this case, he said, please review it. He said, my brother said, oh, please, don't take offense. Even the compositions of great poets, Bhartrahari and others, they also have grammatical flaws. Let us be objective over here. And let's review it. He said, no, there are no flaws in this. And then, if you know any flaws, you point them out. And now he thought he just composed 100 verses. And he thought he would be just stunned. And Mahaprabhu said, okay, his name was my brother at the time. Okay, let's look at the 68th verse. And then he, to the amazement of Keshav Kashmiri, he recited that verse. And then he was stunned. Hey, I just recited those verses like the flow of the Ganga. And the onlookers, my Pandit's students, their mouths had fallen open, their eyes had gone wide. It's a stunning sight. There was the flow of the Ganga on one side, the flow of There's a glorification of the Ganga on the other side. I just spoke them like the flow of Ganga. How did you remember this verse, particular verse? He says, by the grace of Lord Krishna, this is the first insertion of devotion. By the grace of Lord Krishna, he said, you can compose 100 verses on the spot. By the grace of that same Lord Krishna, I can remember whatever I've heard. So Keshav Kashmiri nodded. Okay. And then Nimai Pandit started reviewing that verse. And he said, this is good, this is not good. We will not go into too much of the technicalities of the review because I want to focus on the principle over here. And when he started focusing, pointing out, now see there are in scholarship or in scholarly debates. In debates, there is like again, when you want to get something done, there's above the table and there's below the table. Above the table means in a straightforward, upright way to get things done. But below the table is where you do some corruption and get things done. So those who are scholars, they can, there is a strategy, you bring about conviction. You convince the other person that I'm right. But if you cannot convince the other person you are right, then the second strategy is confusion. If you can't persuade them, just confuse them. And if they become confused about what is right or wrong, they'll accept the authority. This is why sometimes people do word jugglery. Use bombastic words. Use bombastic words which at the end basically mean nothing. But people get overwhelmed by that. Satyatve harshyam evahi. This is one of the characteristics of Kali Yuga. That somebody can just speak bombastically and people get impressed. So anyway, so he was quite adept at debating. And even if he was caught on the wrong foot, even he was caught on a weak point, he would always find a way out. He could juggle. Oh, we can speak this way, we can use this logic, we will use that. So that's all a part of the debate, debating culture. But here, he just found himself tongue-tied. He just couldn't speak at all. And as he couldn't speak at all, he was stunned. And Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit was watching him. Everybody was waiting for him to speak. And he just couldn't speak any words at all. Like he had what sometimes people call the mental brain fog. He just can't think at all. At that time, Nimai Pandit's students started laughing. Now, this would have been especially humiliating. So, now, where they're not cultured, why would they laugh? The point was that if somebody puts on, normally, say if somebody is walking and somebody slips and falls, normally we would not laugh at that person. We would go and immediately move forward and try to take some steps to help that person if you could. But if somebody is putting on a lot of airs, bragging about themselves, claiming to be something that they are not, then at that time, when that person is put down, when that person falls, there's a certain joy in seeing the arrogant being put in their place. That's why when Duryodhana, when he slipped, many of the residents of the Pandava palace laughed. So here they also were about to laugh. It's interesting there, Krishna, Yudhishthira said, don't laugh. And Krishna said, let them laugh. But here, as all of them were about to laugh, Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit stopped. He said, he gave him a graceful way out. He said, stop, don't laugh. And now he was their teacher, and he spoke with such gravity. Don't laugh. So, Mahaprabhu's point, his point was not just to prove that I am better. See, whenever there is a debate, there could be two purposes. One is to prove I am better. The other is to help you become better. And what happens is the two don't usually go together. When words come from our ego, they trigger the ego in the other person. And when they trigger the ego in the other person, then that person just doesn't accept him. So Mahaprabhu gave him a graceful way out. He told him that it's been a long day. You just traveled and you came here to behold the Ganga and you composed 100 verses on the spur of the moment. You must be tired. Now go and take rest and study your books, and tomorrow we'll continue the discussion. So now it's like almost a boxing match is going down and one person has knocked the other person down. And after the knockdown, there could be a knockout blow. But he says, okay, let's suspend this round now. Let's have another round later. You know, while he had got a saving way to save his face, still he felt humiliated. He felt mortified. What happened? Now, he understood. This is one key difference between, say, pre-modern times and modern times. In pre-modern times, it is almost universally understood that human actions have a non-human element behind them. That means what we achieve is not just by our power. There are non-human, transhuman powers backing us. That's why he appreciated when Nimai Pandit said that by Krishna's mercy, you can compose, I can remember. So for him, he worshipped the goddess Saraswati. So he thought, no, the goddess Saraswati, I had worshipped her, and I had appeased her, and being pleased with me, she had granted me a benediction that I would never fail in debate, that words would never fail me. Then what has happened? Why is it that words fail me? So, that is it. So we are here, and there are human actions that we do. But one understanding is that human actions always have a transhuman component to them. There's a transhuman, you could say, aspect to it. That means factors beyond us have to work along with us. And sometimes those factors work for us, sometimes those factors may not work for us. That's why sometimes we may have success, sometimes we may not have success. So there is across the world's traditions, in the Islamic tradition, there is the idea of Kismet. In the Japanese tradition, there is the idea of Shakumi, which is basically the idea of fate, that there is only so much in our control, beyond which things are not in our control. So he said, so whatever is that beyond our control, somehow we try to appease that. Now even in the sports like cricket, which is in sports performance matters. But performance is not all that matters. Cricketers or sports players in general have their own superstitions also. Some players, they will, the Australian team, just about 20 years ago, they were the top of the world. They were in it to win it, they were always very tough. But many of the top players, one of them would always wear a handkerchief, partly outside his pocket, partly inside his pocket. And he would never drop a catch. And if you drop a catch, the first thing he would do is look at the handkerchief. Is it not here? How did I drop the catch? So another player, he would always, whenever he would go out to bat, first he would go to the pavilion's washroom and see if all the commode lids are closed. And then only he would go out to bat. And if he got out early, first he would go to the commodes. If any of the commode lids were open, he would go and blast the steam. Why did he keep it open? Now, people say, what is the position the commode lid got to do with his performance? But the idea is, we all create some mental associations of the unknown with certain factors that are known and controllable by us. So we try to appease the unknown in certain ways and hope that that unknown will work in our favor. So anyway, so Keshav thought that why did Saraswati abandoned me. Is she displeased with me? What did I do to displease her? So he prayed, he went back and fell at her feet. He had a deity of Saraswati and begged her, please, how have I offended you? Why have you abandoned me? On the verge of tears. And then just praying fervently like this, he fell asleep. And while he was asleep, at that time, the goddess came in his dream. And she told him, again he asked the same question, why have you abandoned me? You told me that I would never be defeated by any human being. He said, yes, I promised you that. But the person whom you met was not a human being. He is the Lord of my Lord. Saraswati, she's a goddess. Her husband is considered Brahmani. And Krishna is the Lord of Brahma. Like same Krishna is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this was like a bolt of lightning. Really? It is this person? Once he understood that, all the feeling of hurt, bewilderment, mortification, that he had, all of it disappeared. The next morning, he again went back to the place where Nimai Pandit was having his school. And he went and was about to fall at the feet of Nimai Pandit. And his students were all there. And Nimai Pandit said, oh Pandit, you are a great scholar. Please don't do this. And then they had a talk. Confidentially they talked. And Mahaprabhu blessed him. He said, don't, you have been given great gifts of scholarship. Don't waste it on debates and just boosting your ego. Use your scholarship to glorify the Lord. That is the purpose and perfection of your scholarship. And Keshav Kashmiri accepted that as both mercy and the mercy that had been bestowed, and also as a mission of his life. So Keshav Kashmiri went on to become a great Vaishnava and into Mahaprabhu's words as both mercy, glorify the Lord, and mission. And he is written celebrated Bhagavatam commentary. Later on, he has become a great Vaishnava Acharya. Now at this point, Mahaprabhu himself had not started manifesting his devotion. So therefore, Keshav Kashmiri did not directly join Mahaprabhu's Sampradaya. He went and joined another Vaishnava Sampradaya over there. But he became a great scholar. So in this particular incident, Mahaprabhu does several things. So let's look at how these illustrate his teachings, this particular pastime. Now, one of the most well-known or often quoted teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is about Trunadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Amanadena Kirtaniya Sadari. That he's talking about there is a means and there is an end. So the end is constant glorification of Krishna. This is understood to be in the Bhakti tradition to be the source of unlimited happiness. If our heart can be devoted constantly to glorifying the Lord, to remembering His glories, to relishing His glories, to reverberating and sharing His glories with others, then we can be constantly happy. So Kirtaniya Sadahari does not necessarily have to mean only that we are chanting Hare Krishna. It means that we are glorifying Krishna. It could be through our words, it could be through our actions. Right? So to get to that level, Mahaprabhu says there are 4 things required. He says humility, tolerance, Amanina manadena. So, respectfulness. And amanina. So now, to some extent, amanina manadena, amani can seem the same as humility. But it's a little more, it's no self-obsession. Obsession with, okay, how much am I being respected? Amanina manadena. He says if these four things are there, then we can have our heart constantly devoted to the glorification of the Lord. In every situation, I can think about how can Krishna be served? How can Krishna be glorified in this situation? So let's look at these. Now, with respect to the pastime, this fourth one is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifests over here. No, see, there is when the Keshav Kashmiri is about to be subjected to utter humiliation because of my Pandit students laughing at him. Oh, Mahaprabhu stops him. See, in the past, cultures were very hierarchical. And that meant that actually, if a subordinate, if a person who is very young laughs at somebody who is very senior, that's an unbearable humiliation. And now in this case, what would happen is, Keshav Kashmiri, so it's almost like you consider generation-wise or hierarchy-wise. No. Keshav Kashmiri considered him to be himself at the top. He was both in age and scholarship. He considered himself to be up here. And then Nimai Pandit was here. And then his students were here. Now, if Nimai Pandit's students laughed at Keshav Kashmiri, it would have been like people two levels down, two generations down, they are laughing at him. It would have been unbearable humiliation for him. So I was at one place in Australia, and when there were devotees from the community came and they said, our community leader, we are all very scared of him. What happened? So he said, he just derides us, he chastises us publicly whenever we're doing mistakes. And we just find it very difficult to be here. We just want to keep a long distance from him. So then several devotees told me this, and somehow I had a good relationship with him. So I talked with him and I told him that, this is what he says, that people feel very hurt and alarmed or even scared of you because you chastise the public. He says, I don't like doing it, but I have to. I said, really? Why do you have to? He said that, in our tradition, humility is so important. Now, if I don't chastise them, how will they develop humility? So I told him, Prabhu, if you chastise them, what they are experiencing is not humility. It is humiliation. And the two are hugely different. See, humility is like fasting. Like say tomorrow is Gaur Purnima, some of us may decide to fast. But humiliation is like starving. You want to eat, but you don't have anything to eat. You want to eat, but you're not allowed to eat. One is voluntary, the other is forced. And the experience is very different. So it's so in that, it is for us to develop humility. It is not for us to force others to become humble. Because as soon as it is forced, it is not humility, it becomes humiliation. So it is basically humility is false ego rejected. Humiliation is false ego frustrated. Rejected means, okay, I'm not interested in prestige. Frustrated means, I want prestige, but somehow I can't have it. So for all of us, it is, that's why we look at amanina manadena. So we should be giving respect to others. It is our duty to make ourselves humble, not to make others humble. And because nobody can make anyone humble. Humility has to be a personal, conscious choice. If somebody else does that, then it is humiliation. And can humiliation lead to humility? Sometimes. But more often, humiliation leads to resentfulness, it leads to vengefulness. It just spoils or even ruins the relationship. So they are two very different things. So our duty, it is to make ourselves humble. It is not to make others humble. So we need to be polite and respectful and courteous in our dealings with others. Now that's one aspect to it. Mahaprabhu did not humiliate Keshav. But then we may say, isn't defeating him also? Isn't defeating him also humiliation? That the very fact that he had composed the poetry and Mahaprabhu pointed out faults in his poetry. So isn't that humiliation? Well, not exactly. See, this leads to an important point about what is humility. So, humility is often misunderstood as letting people walk all over us. Especially people say that even in the professional world, that I need to boost my profile. I need to prop myself up. One of my friends studied in the IIM and he said that we learned how to bloat our CV. IIM is one of the top managerial institutes in India. So he said that if you're walking by a road and if you see a tap dripping a few drops of water, you go and turn off the tap and then you add to your CV, I am a water conservation activist. So to some extent, our modern society, the way it functions is, everybody has to promote themselves. So, in a competitive world, if we don't promote ourselves, we may not be noticed. So, humility is thought of as sometimes devaluing ourselves or letting others walk over us. Now, that is not humility. Humility, essentially, what it means is valuing something bigger than ourselves. Humility means that there is, okay, how I am honored, how I am dishonored, that naturally will affect me emotionally. But there is something bigger that matters. Say, for example, if we try to distribute books, try to share scriptural wisdom with others, distribute books, but sometimes people will treat us nicely, sometimes people will not treat us nicely. But what we value is, okay, I have a service of sharing wisdom. And that is what I value the most. Now, of course, but if we find that in a particular community, now everybody dismisses us, everybody disrespects us, everybody mocks us. Now that doesn't mean we have to be like a masochist or somebody who causes pain on oneself and deliberately go with it. No, we can decide to go where we'll be effective. So it's just Prabhupada was trying to share Krishna Bhakti in India and it didn't work. When it didn't work, at least in 1960s, 1950s and 1960s, Prabhupada's Guru Bhaktisaraswati Thakur had said that If nobody comes for your programs, talk to the walls. Speak to the walls. Now, the mood behind that, the spirit behind that assertion was that whatever happens, don't lose your zeal for outreach. But that doesn't literally mean if nobody comes, please keep going a week after week, month after month, the place where you're speaking to the walls. Isn't it? And Prabhupada saw that it was not working in India, Prabhupada came to America. So, essentially, humility means, if you value something bigger than ourselves, to not let our ego come in the way of our purpose. So, what does humility mean? That we have a purpose. So, we value something bigger than ourselves. And what is that something bigger than ourselves? That is our purpose. Now, as devotees, our purpose is to serve Krishna, to glorify Krishna. So we value that purpose more than our ego and its feelings of gratification or mortification. So Mahaprabhu, he was concerned in this pastime. So humility, if we have that stereotypical understanding of humility, he would have just let Keshav Kashmiri walk all over him. He didn't do that. He had a purpose to elevate Keshav Kashmiri's understanding. That you are a great scholar, that's great. But use your great scholarship for a higher purpose. So he pointed out to him, you are thinking, oh, this is your great power. But it is not your power. It is coming from somewhere else. And remember that source. So his purpose, Mayapadi's purpose was not to prove that I am better than you. It is to help you become better. So, if his students had laughed at him, the feeling of humiliation would have been so great for him that he would not have been able to think of anything else at all. So there was a defeat, and that defeat was something just jolting for him. See, sometimes pain, even at a physical level, pain can remind us of higher realities. Just like when we fast, there's a certain discomfort, there's a certain pain. But then, during that pain, we are inspired, we have to focus more on Krishna, remember Krishna. And we absorb ourselves in Krishna. And then when we absorb ourselves in Krishna, then we transcend that pain. So, pain in moderation. This is basically austerity or tapasya. And that what it does is, it can lead to intensification of our Krishna consciousness. Anything. But suppose somebody is fasting and they are fasting. They are feeling so much discomfort and pain. Maybe that they are getting sick and throwing up. Maybe they are not even able to walk. They are feeling constantly tormented. Then that pain is unbearable. So then better for if something like that is happening, but take some food. Take some food and then focus on Krishna. So, for Keshav Kashmiri, in his case, being defeated, that was like pain in moderation. But if it had been being humiliated, being laughed at, that would have been pain in excess. Pain that would have been unbearable. And that would have taken him away from Krishna. But pain moderation, it brought him to, at least made him more open to Krishna. So more open to higher realities, more open to ultimately Krishna. So humility does not mean that on one side we let people walk all over us, but on the other side, humility also means that we don't walk over other people. Now that I defeated you, that Now I will put my foot on your throat or on your nose and I'll crush you. So that's why for us, it is more, we don't want just humility, it is more of purposeful humility. What is our purpose? The Trunadapi Sunechena, it is for the purpose of Kirtanya Sadahaya. It's for the purpose of glorifying the Lord. So we could say two extremes. I'll conclude with this one point and one more point after this. So now one extreme would be that if you consider pendulum, letting others walk over us. This is unhealthy. The other extreme would be walking over others. Now that I have defeated you, I trumpet my superiority over you. And then you just feel so humiliated. That's why sometimes it happens that if say we are discussing a philosophy and we get into a fierce argument. Sometimes we may win the argument, but we may lose the person. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So what we need to do? Our purpose is to inspire others to walk with us. Now I am moving toward Krishna and I would like you to move toward Krishna also. So that is what is important. That is what Mahaprabhu did over here. So he walks his talk. What he says? Humility at the same time, Manadena. Now what about the other two aspects? Tarorapi Sahishnuna and Amani. So those are elaborate subjects. I won't go into that, but I'll quickly mention what they are about. So tolerance, when Mahaprabhu talks about it, tolerance again is like humility, it can be misunderstood. So tolerance is not passivity, that I will tolerate anything and everything. Tolerance is essentially maturity. Now what is maturity? Maturity, like a child. A toy is taken away from the child and the child starts crying and throwing up a tantrum. That's not very mature behavior. Now similarly somebody might be doing some service and then that service is taken away from them. And he's going to someone else and they give some other service. And then they can throw an adult tantrum. Well, all that you're showing is that you're not mature. So what does maturity mean? Maturity means two things. Keep small things small and keep big things big. So when we are adults, we understand. At least we should be able to understand what is important, what is more important, what is less important. And in one sense, this is cyclic. That the more we keep big things big, in one sense you could say both are important, but this comes first. When we keep big things big, then we are able to keep small things small. And conversely, when we are able to keep small things small, we are able to keep big things big. So humility, so tolerance is about maturity, knowing what is more important and what is less important, and functioning accordingly. So Mahaprabhu exhibits tolerance in many other places. Now here also, when there are these subtle put downs, see that when you are just a grammar teacher. Mahaprabhu not saying, okay, you mocked me now. Wait, I'll wait for my opportunity and mock you 100 times worse in the future. No. So amani means that one is not obsessed. So amani, one is not seeking respect for oneself. One is not craving for that respect. So, what is the big thing over here? The big thing is, I want to help you come closer to Krishna. The small thing is, okay, if you don't treat me properly, that's not a big thing. Now, but if somebody mistreats us so much that we can't even think about Krishna. If somebody is humiliating us, somebody is abusing us, somebody is tormenting us, then we have to set boundaries by which we can continue our service to Krishna. So, there is tolerance that is important. And amani means, again, the same point that I am not concerned with respect for myself. Prabhupada says that To not be anxious to have, to be honored by others. To not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. Prabhupada as well defines as humility. So, amani. Now this amani word, it is similar to what Krishna starts in 13.8 in the Bhagavad Gita. Amanitvam adambitvam. So, it is that one is not really fixated on how much I am honored. The focus is on how much my Lord is honored. How much can I help increase the honor of my Lord? So that if we have that focus, then we will be guided. How best to act in various situations. So Mahaprabhu, so when we are practicing bhakti over here in this world, there will be many things which agitate us. And if you want to stay focused on glorifying the Lord, then it's important that we develop this humility, tolerance, respectfulness, and no self-obsession. When we do these things, even one of these things to a small degree can help us to focus more on the glorification of the Lord. If all of these we can develop, then we can be immersed in the glorification of the Lord. It's like, say, where is my water bottle? So suppose, this were like say a bottle of some delicious juice, maybe mango juice or sweet rice or something like that. It's like a flow of nectar, and I'm drinking it. Now if I'm drinking it, if it's really tasty, I just stay focused and let the water come out and go completely in my mouth. But suppose, for whatever reason, suppose I'm restless, that my head is just moving like this. Sometimes, mother wants to give some medicine to a child doesn't want to take the medicine. Mother is holding the mouth, and is shaking the mouth. Shaking. So what happens is, now the child has the notion that medicine is very bitter. But what the mother is offering may be tasty. But still what is happening is, the child is just not ready to drink. So now, no, I don't want it. Shaking. But even through all the shaking, if just a little drop goes in, hey, it's not bad. And then a little more drop, hey, that's not bad. And then the head is shaking. And the shaking increases. And then stop. Just continue drinking. So like that, as long as we lack this humility and tolerance, our consciousness is so shaken by the world's ups and downs that we just can't relish the glorification of the Lord. See, when we are glorifying the Lord, it is like a stream of nectar coming into our consciousness. See, we may be speaking those words, and we are speaking those words for others, but actually they are benefiting us. So, the glorification of Krishna, Kirtaniya Sadahari, as you say, that is like a stream of nectar. But our agitated consciousness, so our agitated consciousness is like a child constantly shaking his head, not able to drink at all. But what helps us, like the mother holding the child, mother making the child steady, steadying the child's head, that is like we developing humility. The more we are able to develop this humility, we developing basically humility and tolerance. The more we do that, the more we'll find that we will be able to relish Krishna's glories more and more. As we relish those glories, then we find Tadviragayan Mahamritamagna Chittaha. My dear Lord, your glorification is so amazing that I just do not care for anything else. That I'm just happy, my dear Lord, delighting in your glories. He says, Prahlad Maharaj said that, actually I'm only concerned about what others are missing out on. there. Maya, Sukhaya, Uddvahato, Vimudhan. That most of the time when we are in the world, when we're not really tasting Krishna's glories, we're looking at what others are enjoying. Go, people are watching movies, people are having all kinds of sensual pleasures, and I'm missing it all. And we feel deprived. But once we start relishing Krishna's glories, then we won't feel, oh, I'm missing all that. We start feeling, they are missing all this. And we share it. That's where our bhakti will become very steady and very joyful. So we can pray to Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that on the occasion of Gaur Purnima, he bestow his mercy on us so that our consciousness can also become fixed in steadily glorifying the Lord, relishing those glories in this life and eternally. So I'll summarize what I discussed. Broadly, I discussed 3 points. First is, I discussed about the Lord's legacy. We discussed how there is. First, the circumstantial legacy is, he comes at that time to establish dharma. And there's a universal, time-independent legacy that comes through his Leela and his Shiksha, his pastimes and his teachings. Leela, broadly, they attract our emotions. The Shiksha attracts our reason. And both of them together, they can absorb our consciousness. Then we discussed, broadly speaking, the Keshav Kashmiri pastime. So, in that, we discussed the whole pastime. But the key thing we discussed was how the Lord defeated him. Defeated, but not disgraced. He was not humiliated. And what happened was, the purpose was not to prove I am better. It is to help you become better. So, and that did happen when Keshav Kashmiri was able to, he would not have heard from Mahaprabhu and accepted, but the same goddess who had blessed and empowered him so much, she told him, he's the Lord of your Lord, Lord of my Lord. And he became receptive. And then he started using his scholarship not to just boost his own glories, but to spread the glories of the Lord. And then we discussed about humility primarily. So we discussed humility and respectfulness. Respectfulness is important. It is that if humility, forced humility is actually humiliation, and that alienates, even antagonizes people. That is not what is going to take them towards Krishna. So by respectfulness, what happens is, there will be inspired humility. When we are respectful to others, then people will see that and they will be attracted. Oh, okay, you are so talented, you are so good, but yet you are respectful. Oh, I should also become respectful. And the humility we discussed, what it is not and what it is. It is not devaluing ourselves. It is not letting others walk over us. It is more of valuing something bigger than ourselves, and that is ultimately our service to the Lord. So when we focus on this, when we focus on valuing something bigger than ourselves, then through humility and respectfulness, through 1 and 2, so 1, 2 like that, 3 and 4, the 4th thing only, we'll be able to get to the constant glorification of the Lord. And is that constant glorification that is a source of unending satisfaction for us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Are there any questions or comments?
Will it be same Prabhu as assertiveness,
Assertiveness, yes, definitely.
tolerance with maturity? Is that assertiveness?
Well, tolerance itself is not assertiveness, because that different virtues have different characteristics. So I would say, in our tradition, purposefulness would be closer to assertiveness. So tolerance is what helps in being assertive. But it's different virtues have different facets. So we can't just equate one virtue with another. So, for example, we can't say humility is assertiveness. Rather, we can say that humility should not stop us from being assertive. In the name of humility is not being passive. So, the word assertiveness is not so much used in the tradition, but purpose and purposefulness is definitely used. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. One purpose we have, and that is considered important. So sometimes the idea of purpose is devalued because karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan. Be detached from the fruits of the work. Yes, that is there, but that does not mean that we don't care for the fruits. The idea is that after we have done the work, whether the fruits come from or not, we are not too emotionally fixated with that. So don't be attached to the fruits. This is one of the more misunderstood verses in the Bhagavad Gita. So it's after being beautiful. Then that is actually attachment. That is maturity. Once we understand that there are things not in my control. But it's before being beautiful. If a mother says to a child, why are you not studying for your exam? He says, I'm not attached to good marks. Well, that is not being detached. That is being irresponsible. So, being purposeful is important. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, please.
Thank you so much for such a nice class. You gave the example of developing humility and respectfulness and tolerance as like the mother keeping the head steady. Can you give maybe some specific examples, especially like what Lord Chaitanya, how we can develop humility? Like specific actions or things that we can do to develop that consciousness?
So how can we develop humility? Well, in that example of mother and child, what the mother is like our intelligence. The child is like our mind. The mind is always going to be restless. The mind is going to be caught, with good feelings and bad feelings. But the intelligence can see beyond those immediate feelings. Or at least it should be able to see. So, with respect to Prabhupada, if we consider humility or tolerance, when Prabhupada in India was respected as a sannyasi. It was more of a cultural deference. It was not a spiritual submission. People didn't want to necessarily follow him and become his dedicated disciples. So, if you consider Srila Prabhupada's trajectory. So, pre-1965, 1965 came to India. He was in India. And especially that period of 1965 to 66. So, in India, he was respected. Now, the respect was more out of cultural deference. In India, the culture was that sadhus, we should offer some respect. But it was not so much like a spiritual dedication. Oh, this person is my guru, I want to follow him, I will do whatever they tell me because they are my well-wishers. This was not there. Now, Prabhupada, at least when he came to America, he was just completely unknown. And it is not that he was deliberately disrespected, but from being a person who was respected, he just becoming an unknown, just a strange old man in a country which is, especially at that time, New York was specialized in neglecting strange people. Because everybody tried to be strange in different ways. So, for example, when he was unknown, now if you see his tolerance, when Prabhupada came in and stayed in Butler, he stayed in the house of this Agarwals, Gopal and Sally Agarwal. So what happened was, now Prabhupada had always lived very purely. And the food that he would eat, he would offer it to Krishna. But here, the food that he had got, he would cook for himself, but he would have to keep it in the same fridge in which they kept meat, and not just meat. From Bhakti perspective, among all forms of meat, beef is the most unbearable. It's cow flesh. So they had beef in their fridge. Now Prabhupada didn't he led them. And she understood, her husband told her, she had, her father-in-law had come there and she understood some of the Indian sensibilities. He said, Swami, I'm sorry, we have only one fridge. And Prabhupada said, think nothing of it. And why think nothing of it? Because for Prabhupada, he had not come there to preach to the other ones. If they had become devotees, wonderful. But after talking for a few minutes, sometimes people to understand whether they are really interested or not. So they had invited Swamiji because their father had told him to. And they were just out of politeness hosting him. So one of the things which she says, which I found remarkable, that Sanjay Agarwal says, in our experiences are given in that book, Leela Amrit, says, Swamiji was the easiest guest I ever had. He said, if I didn't have time to entertain him, he would just chat. So I never felt any pressure because of his presence. Most of the time, if we think of ourselves, if we go to somebody's house, you give me this, don't do like this, he often makes so many demands. So Prabhupada was very tolerant over there. Now why was he tolerant? If say 10 years afterwards, if an ISKCON temple's fridge beef had been there, Prabhupada would never have to think nothing of it. Prabhupada says, why were you not thinking of this before? How did this happen? Because here, his purpose was, okay, I want to be in America and then I want to share Krishna Bhakti in America. And it was always, it soon became clear, Butler wanted to just be a transitional place for it. So think nothing of it. So keep small things small. The big thing was, I'm in America where I have an opportunity to share Krishna. The small thing is, okay, I'm staying over here and there's me. Now it may not be a small thing in another situation, but at that time, in the light of what was a big thing for him, he could treat that as a small thing. So what is a small thing and what is a big thing can also vary from situation to situation. So for example, if you're doing a program for new people, and say in the program for new people, that person maybe sits and stretches their legs and maybe their legs point towards the DT or something like that. Now, ideally speaking, we should not put that new person situation. Don't have program for new people in the temple hall. But if they're doing that, we don't have to humiliate that person by saying, hey, don't sit like that. That is the person new, they don't do anything. So we should treat that as a small thing. But if a person who is a well-established devotee, they know everything and they are doing like that, then maybe we have to point it out to them. Politely, but still. So what is a small thing and what is a big thing can also vary from place to place. So there the big thing is just to inspire them to connect with Krishna. So with new people, we shouldn't be burdening them with fear, you're committing offenses. And if this place is so filled with offenses, I will not come here only. That's how they. So we don't want that. So that awareness? What is the big thing right now? If that is clear, then we'll be able to address that. Now, if you consider Prabhupada's humility, you can see in New York, only Lower East Side, when Prabhupada was living. Then what happened was some of these hippies, the people of the counterculture also started living with him. They got a apartment, and then they had only one restroom over there. And in the mornings, Prabhupada would have to stand in the queue to use that restroom. Now he was elderly, he was like their teacher. You could say culture women, they should defer to him, but Prabhupada just accepted that. Why did he accept that? Because, okay, they were all coming, they were waking up, they were doing Mangala, whatever time they were doing some morning program. And Prabhupada wanted all of them to join, so Prabhupada kept it. So basically, he stood in queue for the restroom. So that was extraordinary humility for him. So I would say that if we keep our purpose in mind, what am I trying to do? Then how can I serve Krishna? How can I glorify Krishna? How can I bring this person closer to Krishna? Then humility and tolerance will become easier for us to practice. Does it answer your question?
Thank you.
Yes.
So I really like the example of humility and how when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in debate with Keshav Kashmiri, then he wasn't like that, I'm the most foreign of the foreign thing. He actually defeated him in the debate. So is that applicable in any competitive setting where we can try to preach others by winning over them. For example, if somebody is working on a job, then he can, you know, try to outcompete everyone else so that he can further encourage them to be differential towards oneself and preach to others.
So in our profession, should we say, excel over others so that they can become more receptive to bhakti? It depends. See, for example, whenever I talk about devotee in professional setting, it can range over a spectrum. The professional setting can just be a job for them. Just a job means a way to earn a living. But for somebody, it can be a calling. It can be they are both deeply interested in that. So suppose somebody's job itself, the guna karma completely aligns with that. Then if that is happening, then their job will be the way they will get completely absorbed. So Krishna has given them some gifts in that area. Suppose somebody just loves physics, and then they are doing research. Most people, as a part of their job, they may do some research, they may do some work, but that's just work. So each devotee will have to find out on what spectrum they lie. So if this is there, then definitely excellence needs to be sought. So we see that Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was a person who was, he performed the Rajasuya Yajna. He had his 4 brothers with him, they're extremely powerful. In fact, to perform the Rajasuya Yajna, he didn't even have to go out of his kingdom. His brothers went in 4 directions and they won. And then he became the greatest king of his times, so that he could glorify Krishna eventually. So it is definitely true. If somebody is having that calling, then they should be in this area. Now, on the other hand, then it's just a job. This is what I'm meant to do. Then just do, as Prabhupada do the needful. So the example of this was Radhi Pratap Rutra, especially after he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was not really interested in fighting more and winning more and more kingdoms. He wanted to use his royal resources primarily for serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now that did not mean that he completely neglected his royal responsibilities. But that was, so in one sense, both could be within the ambit of bhakti. A job being done, a profession being just as a job, a profession becomes a calling. Now we often hear about how when Srila Prabhupada met George Harrison, now he had become probably the greatest musician at that time. And nobody rises to that level of excellence without being extraordinarily gifted. Not just gifted, but gifted and dedicated. Now Prabhupada, at that time, the general conception was becoming a devotee means moving into the jungle. Giving up your career, moving into the temple. Prabhupada told him, don't do that. You write songs about Krishna. Now we hear about this, but there is a subsequent story which is often not talked about. Basically, George Harrison started just bringing Hare Krishna into all his songs. He would be invited to perform concerts and just tell everyone, chant Hare Krishna. And this is described in several of his other biographies. So basically what happened was, here in Madison Square Avenue, he did a concert and he was just telling people chant Hare Krishna, and people were throwing bottles and tomatoes at him. And when it's like to understand what is happening. Say recently India came to the World Cup finals and lost in cricket. Say suppose the Indian captain, say Rohit Sharma or whoever was a devotee. And then the post-World Cup interview, he was asked, why did India lose the match? It's winning, losing, it's all temporary. We should always chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Now, chant Hare Krishna and be happy is a valid instruction. But you cannot imagine probably any other setting where this statement can be the worst form of anti-preaching. What do people think? He was such a promising talent, he got mixed with his Hare Krishnas, and such a promising talent is being wasted. And that's what happened to George Harrison. So then he came and met Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, for every one person that I am bringing closer to Krishna, I feel I am driving a dozen away from Krishna. So what should I be doing? And Prabhupada said, have a balance, use your intelligence. So then he started bringing Krishna more in moderation. He started writing songs the way he used to write earlier. And in some places bringing Krishna. And then the newspaper, the New York Times and other reviews, they started saying, oh, George Harrison came out of this Hare Krishna cult. There was a phase in his life. You see, if we are doing a particular job, our devotion, at least from the other person's perspective, should be a supplement to what we are doing. It should not be a replacement for what we are doing. Like suppose somebody is a heart surgeon, and a person has come with them with a heart attack or they need open heart surgery. Now should the heart surgeon chant Hare Krishna while that person doing the surgery is being done? Okay, you can chant if you want, but your chanting should not distract you from the surgery, isn't it? So, if we are in society expected to do a particular job, our devotion, so because devotion in the workplace, it should be like the supplement. Supplement means what comes additional? Supplement to the work. It should not be a replacement to the work. We cannot, Krishna also says, Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha is maintaining the worlds. Maintaining the worlds means that for each one of us, we play our part in maintaining the order of the world. And we say the world is so complex, what am I doing about it? But if everybody started thinking like that, the world order would collapse. Right now we are using the sound system. So whoever made this sound system, they might have material purposes for making it. But they did a good job. Otherwise we would not be able to hear. When the pandemic had locked the whole world down, at that time, we used Zoom and internet. So whoever designed Zoom and internet, they did a good job. That's why they were able to practice bhakti. So the point is, look, if we are a part of the world, playing a responsible role in the world, then we have to do our part. And if we have to be devoted, great. But our devotion should be in addition. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Any last question before we stop? Yes.
In the same lines, because many students they come and ask, how competitive should we be in the workplace? Because this is will answer the question. I'm asking the lines of how much should we as devotees be overcome by competitive mentality? Because on one hand, being devotees, we cannot. We want to imbibe the devotional culture, but at the same time, it's very difficult to live two types of lives. Devotee inside, and as soon as we go to company, it's like
Yeah,
change of.
it's a very good question. So see, devotion leads to certain level of renunciation. So if there's devotion, I don't want to chase after things of the world. That naturally happens. But this renunciation can be mature renunciation or it can be premature renunciation. And I know many devotees, for example, they're clear they wanted to be grahasthas. And they decided we will take, say, low-paying teaching jobs and we'll focus on outreach work. And they did that. But then 15, 20 years down the line, they find that others, say for example, those who had gone into software jobs, they have earned a good amount of money, they have a lot of financial stability, and now they are thinking of retiring. They have enough savings and they are focusing on a lot of service. But here, where now they have family and they now, these devotees who they do low paying jobs, they do more service. Now at the age of 40, they realize we don't have enough financial reserves for our children's education, for their career. And now at the age of 40, they are realizing maybe we have to slog. We have to work very hard. 44, that's not a good thing for them. And what can happen worse is that if the devotee authorities are not understanding, then what happens is, you are becoming 40, 45 now. You should be becoming detached. And then they're criticized. That doesn't work very well. So basically, it's like fasting. No, we should not be telling people at what level they should be fasting. That it is between you and your body. Should you take 1 meal on Ekadashi? Should you take 2 meals on Ekadashi? Should you take 3 meals on Ekadashi? No, should you take no meal on Ekadashi? You assess it yourself. Focus the principle. Ekadashi is an opportunity for rapid spiritual advancement. And the more we can focus on Krishna, the better it is. But just if we start mandating means instructing, imposing. Mandating fasting, that will be counterproductive. If people start falling sick, now do we have the capacity to take care of them afterwards? So it's something which they should be taking individual responsibility for that. So similarly, just as we won't mandate fasting, so you could say non-competitive mentality. Everybody has to come to their own realization that this is just not worth pursuing, and you cannot force that realization. So what this means is that even people who come to bhakti, not everybody comes from the same background. Some people may come from Sattva, some people may come from Rajoguna, some people may come from Tamoguna background. So everybody will have a certain set of aspirations. So broadly speaking, if we use the word material desires, personally I don't like the word material desires, because material desires, it's such a broad word that it really doesn't convey much. If say my child is sick on the verge of dying and I have to do an expensive operation and I'm desperate for money, is that a material desire? You could call it a material desire, but it is categorically different from being desperate for money to buy the biggest car in the neighborhood. And it's definitely different from, say, desperate for money to get one more drink of alcohol. So, material desires, it's just material desires in Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic. There's a huge variety within them. So, material desires is a category where there is. So generally speaking, goodness, passion, ignorance. These desires, tamasic desires, are anti-devotional. Those definitely need to be given up. Then rajasic desires are generally non-devotional. The sattvic desires are pro-devotional. So broadly speaking, we can have 3 approaches. We work on our desires. Work on means we repeatedly hear about something, how this is futile. When we talk with someone who has been on there, and then we realize this is nothing big. We work on, and then we are able to give up those desires. So maybe somebody has a lot of fascination with drinking. Maybe they want to do that. And then it's tamasic, but not all drinking necessarily has to be tamasic. People can drink in moderation also. But okay, I talk to it. Like Prabhupada said, I am not drunk, but I have not taken drugs, but you go high and you come down again. So we work on it and then we're able to give it up. But sometimes we may have to work with it. This is a desire that I have. Now I had it for a long time. I just can't give it up. Okay, you work with it. So we When we work with a desire means that desire is there and a part of our life we are pursuing it. But we don't let that desire dominate us. We don't let that desire define us. This is there. It's a part of me. I need it. So work on means we are trying to overcome it. Basically, get it out of our consciousness. Work with means we give limited space to it. But we give some space to it. This is what I need in my life. So, but then there may be also some desire that we work for those desires. This is very strong for me. I want to do it. Now, since my childhood, say I had a desire to, to have a big house, a big car, and that was my dream. Or somebody was saying, I wanted to win a particular award, whatever. So now Dhru Maharaj had a particular material desire. He wanted a kingdom, and he worked for it. But we don't let it take over our life. It may still take a major part of our life, but we don't let it take our life, take over our life. So now, which desires we can work on and overcome? Which desires we need to work with? And which desire we need to work for? Each person has to decide that individually. And the best thing which we would say that every devotee try to give themselves an abundant opportunity to experience bhakti. That means if possible, say, come and stay in the temple, participate in the morning program, immerse yourself in bhakti and give yourself an experience of what bhakti is like. And then after that, if you still feel that, okay, this particular desire, this particular craving is still very strong with me, then okay, I can work with it. Maybe I have to work on it. Maybe I have to work for it. We can process that. If we are not practicing bhakti, then what will happen is, we won't be working on any desires, we won't be working with any desires, we'll just be simply working for our desires. And if we are doing that, then definitely we are going to go away from Krishna. Aghayur indriyaramo mogham partha sajivati. Krishna says that. Indriyaramo, if we are simply pursuing our only desire, that becomes the driving purpose of our life. Then we'll be mogham partha sajivati, we'll be wasting our lives. So, it's like by having some immersion in Krishna gives us some intelligence for categorization of our desires. Which desire will fall where? Which desire I can just give up? Which desire I want to live with? Which desire I want to live for? So that categorization becomes easier. This is basically what Krishna calls as, in one sense, this is what Krishna calls as Buddhi Yoga. The Buddhi by which we can do yoga. How can I, from where I am, connect with Krishna? Thank you. Very important question. So, thank you all very much. Let us pray that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bless all of us so that we can get taste for glorifying Krishna and becoming absorbed therein, so that we can all come to the level of Kirtaniya Sadapari. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Gaur Purnima Mahamahotsav ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Can all give a round of